Welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show Power Rankings for Week 6.
Yeah. It's confusing because I thought you were about to say powered by. I'm like, oh my God, did we get sponsored overnight? And I just said no.
Powered by Continental.
Powered by sponsor video. I was gonna say, can we do a battery company? I love battery companies, just like the Energizer Bunny running down on the bottom of the.
How about powered by the Charleston Battery?
Hey, yeah,
there you go. It's a mix of both worlds.
Yeah, I like that.
I didn't get a chance to introduce you yet. That is Logan Stump. I am Jordan Wiegand. We are with you as always for the Power Rankings, and by as always, I mean this is our third time doing it on a separate YouTube video instead of the main show, just because that show gets too long sometimes. So I guess first off, Logan, how are you? Your wife went with you to the game, right? I know some people will probably talk about it on the main show too, so we'll just keep it short here. But just overall, does she agree with your power rankings?
Overall, yeah, I think she actually had Orlando and New England flip just because she wasn't real impressed yet with the attack from Orlando. But I think she thought maybe the Revs had a better attack, and when you have Carlos Heel, I think that has a lot to do with it. She's a big Heel fan, so and he even says it correctly. It's nuts.
Yeah, but for people that don't know, that was actually his first time at the Orlando City game.
I was gonna say at the soccer game, not her first. Never mind. It's a family show.
So let's get through the power rankings. We are going to start with number 5, who took a little bit of a tumble from 2 to 5. It is the LA Galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching the match that they played, and whenever I watch the Galaxy play now, I'm just kind of in this mode because I think we started the season like this too. I think we started the season looking at them thinking, okay, if Chicharito plays really well, this team can be competitive for a playoff spot. They can compete and contend in the West, maybe run up towards the top 4, maybe up in the 3 or 2 range, depending on how the other teams do in the West. But again, when I was watching the game this weekend against Portland, I think there were some things that I noticed this time around, and Portland hasn't been to their full strength yet either. So it was kind of concerning for me if I'm a Galaxy fan, just because this was a game that they should have won if they were going to be one of these teams that competes, or at least grab a point because it is at Portland. So, trying to grab a point there at Providence is difficult, but I think you can do it, and especially with how many players the Timbers were missing. I just wasn't impressed with the Galaxy. They kept Chicharito quiet. I noticed that when he would go through the midfield, they kind of had him locked in to where they couldn't get any kind of space for him. And when that happened, they don't have, the luxury of a number 10 that's really good. Or, I think their best attacking player right now, besides Chicharito, might be Sebastian Lletget. And, he's always been a pretty serviceable player, but never anything that's going to pop off the paper at you. And so that's why I've got Galaxy kind of tumbling down some, because I do think, over the next couple of matches, I want to see, can they do it as Chicharito kind of comes back to earth a little bit.
What I would argue there, though, is that they did have to play down a man for more than half of the match. Dude, it was an awful tackle, which we talked about on the main show. So if you want to hear more about that, you can give that a listen. Number 4, Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, so they're actually the team I think right now, besides the Sounders, look like a stock that you would want to buy and continue buying on into the season, just because right now they started this uptrend, and you've seen them kind of climb the power rankings now that they're up to number 4. But they've just been really impressive. I thought Shallowy's played really well. They really wanted that last year, and he just he was good but not good enough, and they couldn't make that push in the playoffs. This team was a team that finished first last year in the West, but, them trying to contend with big teams was kind of the question, I think, going into this season. And I thought Sporting Kansas City over the last 2 games, they scored 3 up against Vancouver. I know that's not that difficult, but it was a dominant scoring 3 in the first half. Alan Pulido looks really good. They beat San Jose this weekend 3-1. Alan Polito looks good again. So I think that, I mean, this team, if Busio's firing on all cylinders and their defense starts to play like they have, this is a dangerous team. And it's a tough place to play at Children's Mercy Park because when Orlando went there, it's challenging to win on the road against Sporting.
Number 3, people might take issue with this one, New England Revolution.
We keep talking about it and we keep harping on about it. While, again, if you look at their last 4 games, they're against teams, Nashville, who's gone unbeaten, who had been unbeaten, Philadelphia, who had started to play a lot better. They beat a Columbus Crew team that I don't think is very good right now. And then they beat a New York Red Bulls team that I still think the jury's out on. So people are like, okay, why do you have them 3rd and Orlando 2nd? All right, it's because you're wearing an Orlando shirt. It's not. It's for me, it's still Heel is really good, but he had been hurt last year. He's starting to show that he's like one of those 10s that can be like a Nico Ladero or, can create like a Vela or, one of those creative attacking players that can just dominate a game. And so I think we're getting to that point. I need one more win from them before I think they're above Orlando City, just because I think Orlando City, and we'll talk about them next, I think that the Revs have about that same kind of thing measurable with the attacking play of Orlando City. They just have Carly's heel. We don't really have that at Orlando.
I would agree with that. I think also we have to give it to what I'm going to show here is Orlando is 2nd. And the reason why I think that they're above the Revs, not that anybody asked me, but
yeah, Jordan, what do you think?
Is because they're unbeaten still. The Revolution are at the top only because they have a game in hand right now. So I think that gives Orlando something. And the fact is, Orlando without DK, and if he's going to come back, this team could run away with the East. Like they are good. Without Nani winning 1-0, yes, Galise had to kind of stand on his head a bit in that match, but it's just one of those things where they're grinding out the results. They're beating teams that they should beat. They've had, I think, some tougher teams, I want to say, than the Revs, and if not, it's fairly close. But the thing is, they've come out unbeaten, even with a Nani suspension, and they're going to have that continuing into next week here. So we'll see how it goes. They're not going to go unbeaten the whole season, so at some point they may drop, but I think right now they deserve to be the highest East team on the power rankings.
Yeah, just kind of like transitioning into why they're number 2. Orlando City again has only given up 2 goals. It's a defense that's on a historical pace right now, and one of those goals was a PK. So it was, this is a team that has allowed, 1 goal from I think open play and they've played extremely well in the attack. They haven't had a striker per se because Pato gets hurt in the first game. He's missing time. DK isn't back, and it does sound like DK might actually return to this team. So it's a scary thought for the rest of the East. Like you said, I think Orlando, if they get an attacking player that can score like DK or like a Pato who looked really good in that game against Atlanta, I think that you would have this team constantly up there with the Revs.
And number 1 is the Seattle Sounders.
Yeah, it's just hard to change at this point. They're up at the top. What is it, 17 points now? They didn't have a great game against Atlanta, but it wasn't bad. Like it was. They should have won it. The late PK gives them a point. Atlanta as they're visiting Lemon Field, but Seattle kind of had one of those games where it was just kind of like, okay, we're trying to grind through this and we can't quite grind enough in to get a win, which if they would have won 3 points there, they were going to start to just get away from everybody in the West. But right now, as it stands, I just can't put Seattle back down because 1, they're running away with that supporter shield, and 2, they've got this ability, I think, to as soon as you start doubting them again, they're just going to start collecting points.
And let's we talked about this on the main show as well, but this is their hottest start to a season in MLS out of 7 games. That's scary when you think of how good this team has been in the past, that maybe they're just now even somehow reaching another gear that is scary. Now, that doesn't always mean they're going to win MLS Cup. You know, you have teams that can have outstanding seasons and not get MLS Cup, but I think it surely puts some favorites for the Supporters Shield right now. And if I had to make predictions for the West, I would probably change mine up right now and have Seattle at number 1 with the Supporters Shield. But that's the magic of MLS. You never know how it's going to be when you go into a season. We just did our review of MLS, our review of EPL, where we got all three of us got the same top 4. That was no big deal. Matt predicted the league winners right. We did not, but it was something where it felt, and we all got at least one of the relegated teams correct. I feel like we're not going to be able to nail that. I think we're going to end up, when we look at like this Western Conference here or the Eastern Conference here, that we're going to be way off. We might end up with a few of these in the right spot, but I don't think we'll have the type of success we did in the EPL predictions, and that's MLS.
I was going to say, getting into this league for the first time this year, you had said it to me a long time ago. There's no constant. There is parity. There is excitement. There is heartbreak. There's disaster. There's people that come out of nowhere and compete, i.e. like a Houston Dynamo right now, or somebody like a Montreal early on in the season. The Crew, who we all thought, everybody amongst the soccer community just thought that this team was like the Bulls of '93 or whatever it was. So it was, are they stealing the Supporters Shield within the first, 8 games? People thought they were just going to be way out in front, just smashing teams.
At least the Eastern Conference. Right. But yeah, they were definitely the favorites of
the
East and Supporters Shield, I think.
Yeah. So, and look how that's panned out for them. A team that just looks like they're just not fully there. Like, it's, maybe that's why. Maybe they expected to be that team. But again, they haven't even touched our power rankings all the way through, what is this week, going into week 7. So again, I love this league so much just because of how weird it is. And it's off the rocker, because they're like that's what Ash is like, is Toronto good? And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's the fun of this league. It's like sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's it's a lot like baseball, or a lot like the NBA. It's got teams that you've got parity, you've got teams that kind of overtake each other. But I think this one's even more wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, historically Toronto's good, but this year maybe not.
Right. And
maybe so, though. They beat some other good teams. So it's one of those things you just don't know. This isn't like, you don't have where you look at the schedule and you say, oh, we have Fulham coming up. The closest you get to that is probably
Vancouver and Cincinnati
or Chicago at this point.
Yeah.
But even then, that's not always how it goes. Chicago won this weekend over Inter Miami, and Cincinnati beat Montreal. So you just don't know. But I think that about wraps up the power rankings. Thanks everybody for watching. Saturday mornings, as always, we have the Closed Pyramid, talking USL, NISA, MPSL, any sort of lower league. We will talk about those. And then if you missed the main show, that should be up on YouTube where you're watching this right now. That premiered on Wednesday, the 26th. So check that if you want to listen to Stoppage Time Soccer Show, where we did our EPL season in review. That came out on Monday night on the podcast feed. We don't do video for that show. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you all next week for more power rankings powered by Stateside Soccer Show.